Thanks for joining us here on ECCMID TV. I'm Michael Jackson, your host, and our guest joining us in the studio now is in fact a specialist clinician. Allow me to introduce to you Professor Susanna Esposito, who's the director of the Pediatric Highly Intensive Care Unit at the IRCCS Foundation in Milan. Professor, lovely to have you with us.
Oh, thank you very much. It is a pleasure also for me.
Brilliant. Now you said we introduced you as being a specialist clinician, and that's important really, isn't it, in the world of ECCMID, because this Congress is gearing itself much more to your own area.
Yes, I'm really happy that ESCMID in this last year is becoming a Congress very helpful also for clinicians that work in the field of adult medicine but also in the field of pediatrics. Some years ago, ECCMID was mainly related to laboratory part, so mainly related to diagnostics with several good data that were presented, but very few informations that were useful for those that, like me, visit the patients every day. So I'm really happy that now they are changing and they involved both those that take care of the diagnostics, but also those that take care of the patients. And I'm also very happy that ESCMID has created a specific study group on vaccination, because in this last year we have seen several wonderful symposia on this topic that, in my opinion, represented priorities in order to reduce the burden of infectious diseases in the different populations.
And I'm glad you've mentioned vaccinations, because that's your area of speciality as well. In terms of the importance of vaccinations globally, what's happening? What are the perceptions like about the world of vaccinations right now?
Unfortunately, I think that the population overall, I mean the families, but also the adults and the elderly, don't understand the real risks that are associated with some infectious diseases.
Yeah.
And it is a very important issue, because in some cases they don't understand, like measles, that can cause death. And this is amazing, because we have an infectious disease that can cause death. And it is totally vaccination coverage in some countries are not adequate. So I think the problem of the perception, and then even known by vaccines are recommended. Care providers are those that speak with the patients. I think that it is quite can they suggest they don't vaccinate themselves with. So I think that there is something that is lacking. We need specialties, and if even to the knowledge in this field in terms, but also prevention.
Subject of vaccinations here at the Congress as
Yes.
well. Is this the message that?
Yes, we had and workshops, and of course, we have dedicated 2 different sessions to the problem. We can say also vaccination acceptance, vaccination hesitancy, and even on the website promote the positive message that are associated with negative. During these meetings we have dedicated a lot of time even to this initiative that my study group, the EVASG, that is the ESCMID study, like to first of all students and also residents should do when they training in diseases or public health.
Sense to teach medical students of the implications of what goes on in the world of vaccines.
By everybody. Work directly in the field, but that require knowledge in order to promote with their patients.
And
the point is that sometimes vaccination they are related to the prevention and they are administered in a subject that is in stable condition, even when I think the medical doctors, but also the students or the residents are very interested represent the priority. We can really impact on the disease burden, reducing the burden of things are available.
do you think vaccinations get a bad press generally when they come into the media framework? I'm thinking of the recent outcry in Europe, in Britain in particular.
Yes.
And there's almost this outcry that it's not safe.
Yes, I think that this is the problem. I think that probably also by the news that sometimes is not really evidence-based, not supported by the data. And probably the absence of strong political commitment in some cases. I think that is extremely important to work at this should work strongly in the different countries that permit to avoid publications in the media that can be misleading, give wrong information. The other point, anyway, is to work with medical students and also the residents, on healthcare workers, so that those that should communicate with the patients have really an adequate knowledge on vaccination. Because in some cases there are persons that are real experts in a field like cardiac diseases, like cystic fibrosis, like renal failure, but they are not informed on what their patients should receive in terms of prevention, and this is at the end a huge problem, because they cannot have something that represents a real benefit for their population, even for the underlying disease that these patients have.
So in many ways you're unashamedly saying, let's go back to basics.
Yes, yes. I think that we should work in different areas, of course, starting from the basis. Also, of course, during these meetings, we have the opportunity to hear very good presentations on new data, and of course, these presentations are extremely attractive, especially for the experts, and represent big hat that can include altogether the basis, the background, and then with this new information that at the end are extremely useful for our patients.
And you yourself are an acknowledged expert, well over 200 papers. How do you find the time?
During the night.
Enjoying the Congress?
Yes, yes, I enjoyed it very much. And of networks, we can change idea, you can see new data, and ago, and now it is increasing in terms of participation, proposals, in terms of ideas. So
and global reach as well.
Yes, yes, yes. That we have proposals have been accepted represent, I think, a good photo of what our study group is doing.
Fantastic. I love your enthusiasm. Interviewing you here on ECCMID TV. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you very much, Michael
Jackson. A real
Jackson.
joy. Enjoy the rest of your Congress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.